The class fund went missing, so the teacher took me to check the security footage. Instead, we caught a couple making out so passionately they couldn't keep their hands off each other in the empty classroom. The guy was Aaron, my childhood sweetheart who had confessed to me just yesterday. The girl was April, the one he'd always acted like he couldn't stand. Chapter 1. The moment we discovered the class fund was missing, the class monitor immediately accused me and demanded my bag be searched. I caught her shooting April a smug look from across the room, and everything clicked. This probably had something to do with Aaron. Everyone knew April had been crushing on Aaron forever, while Aaron had always brushed her off coldly. Yesterday, when Aaron made a huge public confession to me, I noticed April standing in the crowd, her face pale, eyes glistening with tears as she looked at him with quiet heartbreak. It even made Aaron stumble over half his confession. Still, I accepted the bouquet, and just as he spun me around in excitement, April covered her face, burst into tears, and ran away. She and the class monitor had always been close. Today's stunt was probably just meant to make my life miserable. I didn't take it. I stood up calmly. Doesn't the classroom have security cameras? Check the footage and we'll know. What's there to argue about? Aaron's pen stopped spinning. A trace of panic flashed across his face before he said slowly, I don't think Jenna did it. She's not that kind of person. The moment April heard that, her eyes instantly reddened. She bit her lip and looked at Aaron pitifully. He awkwardly turned his head away, pretending not to notice. The class monitor rolled her eyes before saying loudly, I think Jenna has a point. Even though she was the only one who came back to the classroom during PE, we shouldn't accuse anyone without proof. We should check the cameras and clear Jenna's name. My instincts told me something was off. I just couldn't figure out what. Suddenly, Aaron shot to his feet and kicked his desk over. Enough already, okay? It's just the class fund. How much money is it? I'll pay back double. I frowned. Aaron, what exactly are you saying? I already told you I didn't take it. And you believe me, so why should you be the one paying? Shouldn't we be finding out what actually happened to the money? Aaron turned toward me, looking wronged. Jen, I just can't stand seeing you get dragged through this. I'm not being wronged. I met his eyes calmly. I'll only be wronged if we don't get to the bottom of this. Several emotions flashed across Aaron's face. Finally, he gritted his teeth, shot April a vicious glare, muttered, Fine, have it your way. Then he stormed out of the classroom. Chapter 2. The moment I watched the footage, I finally understood what April had been planning. In the empty classroom, Aaron had April pinned against the wall. The two of them were kissing like they couldn't bear to let go of each other. Golden sunlight filtered through the windows behind them. The handsome boy and pretty girl wrapped in each other's arms looked like they had stepped straight out of a teen romance drama. Jenna, he said dating you was just a game. You didn't know, did you? We made a bet on how long it'd take him to get you into bed. Otherwise, why do you think he confessed to you? Standing behind me, April swept a vicious gaze over my body. Her eyes deliberately lingered on my chest. With a chest as flat as an airport runway, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I tried to hold it in. I really did. But in the end, I turned around and slapped her across the face. April clutched her cheek, staring at me in disbelief, her whole body trembling with rage. You actually hit me? I ignored her and kept watching the footage. I'd almost forgotten why we came here in the first place, to find the missing class fund. Though that clearly hadn't been April's goal. You know what Aaron said? He got tired of you a long time ago. He's known you since childhood. Holding your hand feels no different than holding his own. By now, class was almost over, and everyone was getting ready for PE. He also said your bedroom has terrible taste. Looks like a guy's room. You leave your bras lying around everywhere. And they're all those cute little styles that look like they belong to a kid. They don't turn him on at all. The students began leaving for PE. The first ones walked out. He even said he always knew you liked him. Remember your 7th birthday? He forgot to buy you a present. So he picked up a dirty stuffed toy from a trash can by the roadside and lied that he dropped it by accident. You treasured it like it was priceless. Washed it clean, put it beside your bed. And you still sleep hugging it. The last people to leave were April and the class monitor. They took out the bag containing the class fund from the desk. And then, He said what disgusts him the most is the way you secretly look at him. Your crush gives him the creeps, like a spotlight following him everywhere he goes. Sometimes he thinks you're obsessed with him, like some kind of stalker. The class fund had been tossed behind the trash can. Found it. I forced myself to turn off the footage and looked expressionlessly at April. Finished? April froze, still clutching her cheek. She instinctively took 2 steps back. I smiled faintly. I'm not hitting you again. I don't want to dirty my hands. We found the class fund. I'm heading back. Behind me, April ground her teeth in fury. Jenna, you're going to regret this. Chapter 3. After finding the class fund behind the trash can, I handed it to the teacher and asked for the rest of the day off. I didn't want to face Erin. Everything April had said kept replaying in my head, over and over. At first, I refused to believe Erin could have said those things about me. But the moment she mentioned the stuffed bear, I believed her. Because just 2 days ago, my parents had invited him over for dinner. Like always, he walked straight into my bedroom without knocking. I just changed into a dress and blushed as I told him to remember to knock next time. He only shrugged. What do you have that's worth looking at? It made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off as a joke between close friends. Now I realized he'd meant every word. Then he noticed the teddy bear on my bed. Most of its fur had already fallen off, leaving only its worn-out body. Erin frowned with obvious distaste. You still keep this? I lowered my voice. It was the first birthday present you ever gave me. What I didn't say was, that was why I wanted to treasure it. For a brief moment, Erin looked touched. Then he wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I'll get you a better one this year. You should throw this one away. Surrounded by Erin's familiar scent, I could hear my own heartbeat pounding wildly in my ears. April was right. I'd liked him for a very long time. So when he confessed to me, I accepted without a second thought. Apparently everyone else had known how I felt. So why was Erin the only one who had never noticed? Just then, Erin's ringtone, the one I'd set just for him, suddenly rang. The moment I answered, an angry voice came through the phone. Why did you push April down the stairs? Chapter 4. When I arrived at the hospital, April's mother was comforting her beside the bed. The moment she saw me, she charged over, jabbing a finger so close it was practically in my face. How could you be so vicious? Just because you're jealous of April, you pushed her down the stairs? I'm telling you right now, this isn't over. April lay weakly in bed with a cast on her right ankle. She looked at me with barely concealed smugness. Pulling on her mother's sleeve, she said tearfully, Mom, please stop. She didn't do it on purpose. Erin stood off to the side, disappointment written all over his face. Jenna, I never thought you were this kind of person. Oh, really? Calmly, I took out my phone and dialed the police. Hello, I'd like to report a case. April immediately panicked. Jenna, what are you doing? Calling the police. I lightly waved my phone. You said I pushed you, didn't you? Don't you want justice? I forgive you. April bit her lip, looking heartbreakingly pitiful. I know you've always minded how close Erin and I are, and after seeing the security footage yesterday, you just lost control for a moment. Panic flashed across Erin's face. He carefully stepped toward me and reached for my hand. Jen, I can explain. I took a step back. After briefly explaining the situation to the dispatcher, I turned to April with an icy expression. There's no need. I don't need your forgiveness, because I didn't do it. Even if you're willing to let it go, I'm not willing to be falsely accused. As for you, I looked Erin up and down. For the first time, I couldn't even think of an insult that suited him. Jen, don't look at me like that. Erin seemed to crack first. I really can explain. I let out a cold laugh, but I don't want to hear it. Then I raised an eyebrow at April. I'll accept whatever conclusion the police come to. April, the truth has a way of proving itself. Chapter 5. Unfortunately, I spoke too soon. April had dared to frame me because she knew she could get away with it. The hallway security camera had been broken. The classroom footage only showed that I left first. April followed after me, and the slap inside the classroom proved we had a conflict. Everything made me look even more like the one who had pushed her down the stairs. No matter how many times I insisted I hadn't done it, no one believed me. My parents were called to the office. After hearing what had happened, my mother didn't even let me explain before slapping me across the face. Can't you grow up for once? When are you ever going to get rid of these terrible habits? Then she turned to April and apologized. I'm so sorry. She was raised in the countryside when she was little, so she picked up a lot of bad habits. We've tried for years, but she still has her problems. Please tell us how much compensation you want. My ears rang. My mother kept going on and on about everything that was wrong with me. Aaron stood not far away. His lips parted as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he stayed silent. When our eyes met, he looked away. April skipped over to me and whispered with a smug smile, Jenna, this is what happens when you make an enemy out of me. Amid the noise around me, I heard my own voice. I didn't push her. I stared stubbornly at my mother, hoping she'd stand by me, just once. But she didn't. The evidence is obvious. And you're still lying. Her eyes were full of disappointment. How many more lies are you going to tell? So as long as someone says I'm a bad person, you'll believe them? Are you really that afraid I'll outshine my little brother? What kind of nonsense is that? Embarrassment flashed across my mother's face, as though I'd exposed a secret she'd been hiding. She suddenly covered her face and burst into tears. I worked so hard to raise you. The office was surrounded by students. Every one of them wore the same eager expression, waiting for the drama to unfold. I felt like a clown performing for an audience. All right. The vice principal stepped in to smooth things over. You're all classmates. Let's just leave it at that. April smiled sweetly and said loud enough for everyone to hear. Mom, I never knew Jenna had such a difficult life. Let's just forget about it. My mother immediately looked up, smiling gratefully. Thank you. You're such a beautiful girl with such a kind heart. As we walked out of the office, I looked at Aaron in the crowd and quietly asked, Do you think it was me? Aaron lowered his eyes. I don't know. People change. I nodded. He was right. People do change. Chapter 6. That night, while I was studying at home, I got a message from Aaron. Come downstairs. I opened my window. He was leaning casually against a tree with his head slightly lowered, holding something in his hand. After a moment's thought, I closed the window and blocked him. Outside my room, my parents were arguing loudly about something. My younger brother walked in, holding a phone. Jenna, Aaron wants to talk to you. I took the phone and hung up without a word. If he calls for me again, just hang up. My brother took the phone back and asked quietly, Jenna, are you unhappy at home because of me? I rubbed his head. None of this was his fault. If anything, he'd always been a good kid. When I was first brought back from the countryside, he'd been hostile toward me. He was always picking fights with me. That was also when Mom's bad impression of me became deeply rooted. She believed I wanted to hurt him, that I was competing with him for our parents' love. But after he started kindergarten, he gradually changed. He'd save his favorite snacks for me. Whenever Mom and Dad went out, if I wasn't going, he refused to go too. Maybe he still remembered everything that had happened. Maybe he knew I didn't like him, so he'd always hide quietly in the corner and sneak glances at me. I still remembered one time when our parents weren't home and I took him out to eat. He held my hand tightly the whole time. While eating his hamburger, he lowered his head and whispered, I'm sorry. At that moment, I realized he'd been carrying those memories just as long as I had. So I forgave him. It has nothing to do with you. I gently ruffled his hair. Don't overthink it. Did Aaron bully you? He clenched his fists. I'll beat him up for you. I couldn't help laughing. I nodded. He was too blind to see what he had. Don't bother with him anymore. We're not friends anymore. Either. Don't be sad. Jenna, you're amazing. You'll meet someone much better someday. I smiled softly. So everyone knew I liked Aaron. Yet he'd still waited until now to confess. Maybe April had been telling the truth. Maybe this whole thing had been nothing more than a game they planned together. The next morning, the moment I stepped into the classroom, Aaron blocked my path. His expression was grim. Why didn't you come downstairs yesterday? And why did you block me? Need something? My indifference seemed to sting him. He grabbed my arm roughly. You still owe April an apology. I yanked my arm free. Aaron, are you out of your mind? I told you, I didn't push her. The police already confirmed what happened. Yet some people still refuse to admit it. The class monitor folded her arms and sneered. Stubborn to the bitter end. Even your own mother admitted what kind of person you are. Chapter 7. My classmates crowded around, talking over one another. Every pair of eyes was filled with condemnation. Jenna, I never thought you could be this cruel. What's so surprising? She probably found out Aaron only confessed to her because of that bet with April. Her lifelong fantasy got shattered. So she snapped. You seriously thought this would make Aaron like you? Jenna, you're disgusting. You're just like those obsessed psycho girls in romance novels who can't handle rejection. It felt as if thousands of voices were cursing me at once. Every insult drilled into my ears and sank deep into my soul. The voice inside me that had kept crying, I didn't do it, grew quieter and quieter, until it was barely there anymore. What's the point? I wondered. My whole life had been a joke, like someone who was never supposed to exist in the first place. My silence only fueled them further. It wasn't until the homeroom teacher walked in with the ringing of the class bell that I finally got a moment of peace. The college entrance exams are almost here. I hope everyone focuses on studying, and if certain people insist on doing terrible things, at least don't drag everyone else down with them. I looked up instinctively. My lips parted. But the moment my eyes met the teacher's, I slowly lowered my head again and let out a bitter laugh. From that day on, I became the target of relentless bullying. My textbooks disappeared. My desk was covered with hateful graffiti. There was always trash stuffed under my chair. Sometimes people even smeared filth onto the seat itself, so stained that no amount of scrubbing could remove it. One day, while I was desperately trying to clean it, Aaron walked past me. Jenna, when you do something wrong, you have to pay the price. When you apologize to April, everyone will leave you alone. I acted as if I hadn't heard him. Everything reached its breaking point after April returned to school. She had already fully recovered, but she kept pretending her ankle still hurt, ordering me around like a servant. She even called it giving me a chance to make up for what I'd done. Whenever I refused, she'd instantly well up with tears, grab Aaron's sleeve, and whimper. Aaron, it hurts. Aaron looked at me and flashed a grin. Then he walked over and kicked me in the leg. The pain was so intense that I collapsed to my knees. If you won't do what you're told, he said casually, then stay on your knees and atone to April. I struggled back to my feet. He kicked me down again. I stood up again. He kicked me again, over and over, until even his legs were beginning to shake from exhaustion. But I still forced myself back to my feet. I stared him straight in the eyes. Aaron, you'd better kill me today, because otherwise, I will never bow my head to her. Disbelief filled Aaron's eyes. Some classmates grew nervous and tugged on his sleeve. Forget it. He seized the opportunity to back down, pretending it was his own decision. Since someone's asking for you, I'll let you off this time. I let out a quiet laugh. I don't need your mercy, Aaron. I think you've forgotten something. I looked at him calmly, speaking each word with absolute clarity. We're done. From now on, you and I have nothing to do with each other. Aaron shot to his feet. His eyes turned bloodshot as he glared at me through gritted teeth. Jenna, say that one more time. Chapter 8. Is it really that hard to understand? I endured the pain and stood my ground. This was just a game, wasn't it? After everything that's happened, did you even remember I was supposed to be your girlfriend? I don't agree. He gritted his teeth, looking genuinely angry. I found it absurd. Everything about this was absurd. Why? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. After a long pause, all he could manage was, I just don't. I let out a soft laugh. Aaron, you're disgusting. I even felt sick knowing I'd once loved you. April's expression darkened. She grabbed Aaron's arm. Aaron, what do you mean? I thought this was just a game. Don't tell me you can't let her go. Stay out of it. He shook her off impatiently. April cried out as she fell to the floor. Aaron immediately panicked and rushed over to help her up, while everyone was distracted by the chaos. I quietly grabbed my backpack and slipped away. My legs still hurt terribly. I limped with every step, slowly, but without ever looking back. Everything that had happened lately felt like a nightmare. Aaron, when did you become like this? I couldn't understand, because once upon a time, he had been so good to me. We first met in a park. I'd just moved to the city. Everything felt unfamiliar and cold. Whenever I was hurt, I had nowhere to go, so I'd wander through the nearby park, trying to let my emotions out. Most of the time, I'd simply walk aimlessly until I could swallow the pain on my own. There was only one time it was different. I was doing my homework when my little brother rolled off the bed. Without asking what had happened, my parents beat me. They decided it was my fault for not watching him. I ran to the park and cried. I accidentally woke Aaron, who had been sleeping on a bench nearby. He'd always been impossible to ignore. Bright red hair, confident, the kind of person who stood out wherever he went. His family was wealthy. He was an only child. He couldn't understand my pain. He couldn't imagine parents treating their own daughter that way. But he respected it. He never told me I had to understand my parents. Never told me I had to forgive them. Never told me I had to be good to my brother. Instead, he simply stayed with me. We skipped stones across the lake, played basketball, spent hours at the arcade. One time, just to distract me, he even dragged me to a murder mystery role-playing game. I became so absorbed in solving the mystery that I forgot the time, forgot the pain. All I remembered was being with him. He had pulled me out of the darkness. I couldn't understand why he found it so easy to push me right back in. I'd given him chances. The first time he humiliated me, I didn't break up with him. I still accepted being his girlfriend, because that title secretly made me happy. How could anyone not fall in love with the person who had once been their light? It was because of him that my long, lonely, dark life had finally known happiness. But now, the light was gone. Chapter 9. I walked into the police station carrying my evidence. The officer who greeted me was the same one from last time. He told me his name was Edgar. I'd recently attached a keychain to my backpack. Aaron had never paid any attention to it. What he didn't know was that it was actually a miniature hidden camera. There wasn't much I could do about the everyday bullying. After all, you couldn't walk into a police station and say, "My classmates called me an idiot. Please arrest them." Bullying doesn't come in just one form. Sometimes it's hidden in people's words, their actions, the little things they do every single day. Those things can hurt just as much, but they usually aren't enough to prove anything. Today, however, they had gone too far. The video clearly captured everything. Aaron kicking me to the ground, again, and again, and again. Edgar's face grew grim. The young policewoman beside him clenched her fists so tightly her knuckles cracked. She looked at me and said, "Don't worry, we won't let them get away with this." "Thank you. You need to go to the hospital first." Edgar frowned, grabbed his car keys, and stood up. "I'll take you." His tone left no room for argument. During the drive, he kept his eyes on the road, but the crease between his brows never disappeared. "Jenna, this will pass. Right now, your biggest priority is the college entrance exam. Understand?" "I know." I looked out the window at the passing scenery. The only hope is getting out of this place. Once I leave this mess behind, I'll finally have a future. "Oh, right." Edgar suddenly smiled. "Want to hear some good news? The last case finally has some progress." I went back and investigated a few more times. There weren't any security cameras covering the stairs, but there had been a car parked on the west side of the building. It had a dash cam. We might be able to find some useful footage. "Thank you." That was the best news I could have hoped for. After leaving the hospital, the doctor said I'd been lucky. Nothing was broken. With enough rest, I'd recover. The downside was that my injuries were classified as minor. Legally, they weren't serious enough to bring criminal charges. Still, after Edgar insisted, I agreed to use a wheelchair for a while. It made me look pretty miserable. Ironically, I now looked a lot like April. Edgar walked me to my front door before leaving. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The house was silent, just as it always was. My parents were both working at the factory. After school, my little brother usually went there to have dinner with them. As for me, I'd always been expected to take care of myself. I used to cook for my brother, too. But after I deliberately overloaded every dish with salt and chili until it tasted awful, they gave up asking me. They knew I was doing it on purpose. Even so, they weren't willing to gamble with their own son's health. Given the condition I was in today, all I could do was dig a pack of instant noodles out of the cupboard, just enough to fill my stomach. Chapter 10. Suddenly, someone started pounding on the door. Bang, bang, bang. Aaron's drunken voice came from outside. "Jenna, come out!" Standing on the other side of the door, I replied calmly. "You're drunk. Go home." "I'm not." He sounded like he was leaning against the door, still slamming his fist into it. "Come out." "We're not done talking." What was left to say? "You broke up with me. I don't accept it." "Aaron," I answered coldly. "Have you lost your mind? After everything you've done to me, do you seriously think I'd still like you?" Silence. Then, a moment later, he became even more agitated. "Why wouldn't you? You've liked me all this time. I only treated you that way because you did something wrong. If you do something wrong, you should be punished. Isn't that how it works? What gives you the right to break up with me? I never agreed to it." A ridiculous thought suddenly crossed my mind. "Aaron, don't tell me you actually like me. Why can't I?" I almost laughed out loud. "So this is your version of love? You believed I was guilty without a shred of proof. You used to tell me April was nothing but your pathetic simp. Then you suddenly started defending her, and helping her bully me. Aaron, are you seriously insane?" "I can explain." "Fine. Go ahead." I leaned against the door. I had no intention of opening it. There was a dull thud outside. It sounded like Aaron had slid down and was sitting against the door. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "I don't like April. I never have. It's just, she liked me. Completely. I'd never had someone pay that much attention to me before. Even you. Jen, I never knew whether you actually liked me. I wanted you to give in, to stop acting so proud." When April suggested the bet, I agreed immediately, because I liked you. I wanted to be with you, so I confessed. When you said yes, I was happier than I'd ever been. But afterward, April told me that you never meant it. She said you only accepted because I confessed in front of everyone and you couldn't reject me. She said you didn't actually like me. She told me she'd prove it, that you didn't really need me. The truth is, I never cared whether you pushed April or not. Even if you really had, I wouldn't have cared. As long as I was protecting you, who could have done anything to you? But you just wouldn't give in. Jen, why are you so stubborn? There was actually a trace of helpless affection in his voice. It made me sick. I couldn't understand how he had twisted love into something so selfish, so possessive, so obsessed with making me submit to him. Quietly, I switched on the voice recorder on my phone. "So, you know I didn't push April, right?" "Yeah," Aaron answered calmly. "I asked her. April told me she'd never lie to me. She said she'd rather get hurt herself than let me misunderstand your feelings." "What the hell?" "So even though you knew, you still encouraged everyone to bully me. You didn't care whether I wanted any of it." "No, I just wanted you to come begging to me. If you'd just begged me, I would have protected you. So why wouldn't you?" As disgusting as it was, I forced myself to keep him talking. "So everything that happened to me, the bullying, the false accusations, the beating, you and April planned all of it, to force me into submitting to you." "That's right. And the classmates who went along with you, did they know the truth too?" "No, they're just a bunch of idiots. They believe whatever they hear. If I said something, they believed it. That was enough." I stopped the recording. "Aaron, get out. I recorded everything you just said. I'm taking it straight to the police. You and April can explain yourselves to the law." "Jen, if that's what'll make you happy, if it'll make you forgive me, I'll cooperate." What an idiot. Did he actually think that made him sound romantic? Chapter 11. After handing all the evidence over to Edgar, I finally had the best night's sleep I'd had in a long time. The next morning, I woke up to a message from him. The case had officially been accepted. A weight lifted from my chest. I skipped morning self-study. Instead, I made a deal with a senior who worked in the school's broadcasting room and covered her shift. Then, without the slightest hurry, I played the recording of Erin's confession over the school loudspeakers. Almost immediately, teachers came rushing upstairs. They pounded on the broadcasting room door, begging me over and over, "Please, just let it go. Enough already." The banging shook the entire room. I didn't move an inch. I almost laughed. After the class fund incident, I'd gone to my homeroom teacher. She'd told me. The class monitor already explained everything. It wasn't intentional. She simply forgot the money near the trash can. Since it was found, let's just leave it alone. After April accused me of pushing her, I went to her again. She'd said, "But there's no proof you didn't push her. Besides, her parents aren't pursuing it anymore. If this gets bigger, it'll only hurt you." When I was being bullied, her answer had been exactly the same. "Just let it go. They're only fooling around. It's not a big deal. If you endure it, it'll pass." Well then, since she understood letting it go so well, surely she'd understand when I told her the exact same thing today. I couldn't help wondering, how did those classmates feel now? The people they'd trusted, the truth they believed, all shattered, and after hearing Erin call them nothing more than gullible idiots, how did that feel? I was genuinely looking forward to finding out. I played the recording 3 times. Only after the principal himself arrived did I finally unlock the door. "Why you, Jenna?" My homeroom teacher was so flustered she could barely speak. She pointed at me with a trembling finger. I merely shrugged. "Teacher, I didn't mean to. So, why don't we just let it go?" The principal looked at me seriously. I truly didn't know any of this had been happening, but now I do. "I promise you'll get the justice you deserve. You have my word. You're in your final year. I hope this won't affect your studies." "It won't," I smiled. "If anything, it'll become my motivation." "Oh, one more thing. My leg still isn't in good shape. I'd like permission to stay in the school dorms and study there. Getting to class is difficult for me. I'm sure the school won't refuse such a reasonable request." The principal arranged for a younger student to help move my belongings. Still sitting in my wheelchair, I returned to the classroom. Erin's desk was covered in trash. His clothes had been ripped. His hair and face were smeared with garbage, bruises, and cuts. The classroom was completely silent. Every eye turned toward me. Erin silently moved his lips. "Are you satisfied now?" Satisfied? Not even close. For him, and for April, their suffering had only just begun. The police took both Erin and April away. Word spread that they confessed almost immediately. Their crimes weren't severe, but I refused to settle. That meant the case would stay on their records. Afterward, both of their parents came looking for me. They offered money in exchange for a signed settlement agreement. My parents immediately agreed. I didn't. Fortunately, I was already an adult. Edgar insisted that only my own signature would be legally valid. No matter how much my parents argued, I refused. In the end, they had no choice but to leave while cursing under their breath. I moved into the school dormitory. Every day, someone helped bring me meals. Someone else helped carry hot water for me. The truth was, my injuries healed fairly quickly. Erin had never actually tried to cripple me. The classroom became much quieter too. Several seats were left empty. Everyone who had joined Erin in bullying me had been identified by Erin himself. Every one of them received a major disciplinary mark. Crying wasn't enough. Apologizing to me wasn't enough. They were also forced to stand before the entire school and publicly read letters of self-criticism. Both Erin and April were expelled from school while serving their 15-day detention. I couldn't have been happier with that outcome. Erin tried messaging me afterward. I blocked him without hesitation. April, on the other hand, flooded me with curses and insults. I took screenshots and sent them straight to the police. Not long afterward, I received a written apology from her instead. It felt wonderful. For the first time in a very long while, the sky finally looked clear. Chapter 12. After Erin and April were released, they returned to school during the final stretch before the college entrance exams. Neither of them looked well. April kept her head lowered, avoiding everyone she saw. She even flinched whenever someone got too close. as though she was afraid of being touched. Aaron, on the other hand, looked almost the same as before. His head was still held high. Standing at the podium, our homeroom teacher looked at them with a complicated expression. "I've been reassigned. After your college entrance exams are over, I'll be leaving this school. I wasn't a qualified teacher. I always believed that maintaining harmony and putting academics first was the right approach. Because of that, I ignored what was happening to Jenna. That was my failure as a teacher. I hope all of you learn something from this. School isn't just about gaining knowledge. It's also about learning justice and having the courage to tell right from wrong. I know many of us blindly followed others. We admired the wrong people. We stopped thinking for ourselves. Jenna's experience reminded us that no one should ever follow the crowd without questioning it. It's a painful lesson. I can't say it was worth the cost, but I do hope those who made mistakes will have the courage to take responsibility for them. All of us owe Jenna an apology." With that, the teacher bowed deeply toward me from the front of the classroom. One after another, more and more classmates slowly stood up, heads lowered in shame. They admitted what they'd done and apologized to me. As the person who had actually lived through it, I didn't feel much. The damage had already been done. I didn't want a simple apology to magically erase the scars they left behind. I wanted them to carry that guilt for the rest of their lives. I don't want to forgive anyone. I remained seated and spoke calmly. "Teacher, I'm grateful for what you just did, but I don't want to forgive them. Is that okay?" My homeroom teacher froze for a moment before forcing a smile. "Of course. Apologizing is something we owe you, but forgiveness belongs entirely to you. No one has the right to force it." "Good." I nodded. The teacher's gaze shifted toward Aaron and April. As for the two people most responsible, I still don't see any real remorse. Maybe that was exactly why. The moment class ended, I saw the student sitting behind April suddenly kick her chair. April screamed and fell to the floor. The boy merely shrugged. "Sorry, my foot slipped." Biting her lip, April quietly picked herself up, set the chair upright, and sat back down. The second she sat, he kicked the chair again. She silently repeated the entire process, again and again. I didn't want to watch anymore, so I got up and headed to the rooftop for some air. Footsteps sounded behind me. I turned around and instinctively stepped farther away from the edge. Aaron stopped several feet away and let out a bitter smile. "Jen, do you really think I'd hurt you?" "What else should I think?" I raised an eyebrow. "You lost everything. You went from being the golden boy everyone admired to someone everyone despises. Doesn't that make you want to kill me?" He sighed. I finally realized how wrong I was. I actually believed that if you depended on me, it would prove you loved me. I couldn't help laughing. "Aaron, are you still in elementary school? You actually dreamed of being some all-powerful hero? You wanted a woman to depend on you for everything, to treat you like the center of her world, just so you could satisfy your own hero complex? Seriously, who gave you that ridiculous idea?" Chapter 13. Aaron froze. Then a bitter smile spread across his face. "Yeah, I don't even know anymore. Ever since I was little, my grandma always told me that women were supposed to depend on men. They were supposed to take care of men. Men were born to enjoy life. Just look at my parents. My mom can't do much on her own. She depends on my dad for everything, but she also takes great care of both of us. They hardly ever fight. So I thought, maybe that's what love was supposed to look like. I was wrong." He looked at me with pleading eyes. "Jen, can you forgive me?" I took a step back and pointed at my own face. "Do I look like an idiot to you?" Suddenly, a rush of air came from behind me. Aaron's pupils contracted. "Jenna!" He lunged toward me. I turned around just in time to see April charging at me with a knife. Her face twisted with madness. But I threw up my arm to block it. The blade sank into my forearm. Using the impact to my advantage, I drove my foot straight into her chest. After Aaron had kicked me in the classroom, I'd asked Edgar to teach me a few self-defense techniques. I'd also been working out regularly. I was never going to leave my safety in someone else's hands again. You can never be too careful. See? It finally came in handy. April crashed to the ground. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were bloodshot. Even then, she kept screaming curses at me. Looking down at the knife wound in my arm, one thought crossed my mind. Well, this definitely isn't going to be classified as a minor injury anymore. Aaron rushed over and kicked April hard in the chest. April! Have you completely lost your mind? She had been cursing at me, but the moment she looked at Aaron, she suddenly started laughing. Aaron, why are you doing this to me? Why are you protecting that bitch? Do you know none of this would have happened if she didn't exist? I'm the one who loves you most in this world. I am. Aaron instinctively took 2 steps back, clearly shaken by her crazed expression. He frowned. April, even now, you still don't think you've done anything wrong? What did I do wrong? She screamed hysterically. Tell me, what did I do wrong? Suddenly, her body stiffened. Her eyes bulged. A choking, rattling sound escaped her throat. Clutching her chest, she curled into a ball and began trembling violently. Aaron stood there in shock. I immediately pulled out my phone and called an ambulance. Then I rushed over, turned her onto her back, and began performing first aid. April stared blankly at me. The bright, lively eyes that had once been so full of life, gradually lost their light. Just before they went dark, I saw a single tear slowly roll down the corner of her eye. April died. At the police station, Aaron confessed to everything without resistance. His life was over. Chapter 14. While I was at the hospital getting my arm bandaged, Edgar let out a long sigh. Kids these days, how can they all be this reckless? Honestly, I never expected April to go that far. April's parents have completely fallen apart. They grabbed Aaron at the police station and demanded that he pay with his life. I wasn't surprised. After all, not every child grows up being treated like they don't matter. We have a young officer on the team. Her family's away on a business trip. Why don't you stay with her for a while? Huh? Living at school isn't a long-term solution. Edgar rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. You need a place where you can focus on preparing for the college entrance exam. But I don't have any money. That's not an issue. He cleared his throat. I mean, she doesn't mind. Then, thank you. I didn't refuse. Compared to all the unnecessary worries people carry, it's better to accept genuine kindness when it comes. As for repaying the favor, that can wait until another day. After all, how many debts of kindness can ever truly be measured? Aaron was already an adult. In the end, the medical examiner concluded that April had died from a sudden heart attack. The kick Aaron landed on her chest had triggered it. As for the stab wound on my arm, April's parents paid me $80,000 in compensation. That matter ended there. There was little point in pursuing anything further. The dead were gone. Everything that had happened was carried away with the wind. Until the day of the college entrance exam, my parents never contacted me even once. Honestly, that was probably for the best. At least they couldn't keep asking about the compensation money. The exams ended quietly beneath the heavy summer heat. That night, Edgar treated Tina and me to dinner. After drinking too much, he hugged a liquor bottle with glassy eyes and hiccuped between his words. Jenna, you have to study hard. Don't end up like my little sister. Tina quietly leaned toward me and whispered. His younger sister was bullied at school before the college entrance exam. She couldn't take it anymore, and took her own life. So that was why, from the very first time we met, he'd gone out of his way to help me. Maybe, by helping me survive everything she'd never escaped, he had, in a way, saved his sister too. I gently clinked my glass against his. Officer Edgar, everything will get better. The past was too dark to chase. The road ahead was bright.